Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Over the course of the last several years, we've been working closely with our friends at the UK CAA to develop a comprehensive IPA and special arrangements to accommodate a new bilateral relationship as UK exited the EU. Most of the conditions and agreements were put into place with the understanding that some adjustments would have to be made once UK and EU Brexit negotiations were further clarified. Therefore, we have some recent changes to share with you during today's outreach. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce some of my colleagues at the FAA and the UK CAA, who will be part of a panelist group, and some will be presenting and others will be assisting with answering your questions. As everyone comes on, please note that we will have a Q&A panel. So if you're logged in, you can click on it and ask us any questions, and we'll do our best after the presentations to answer all your questions with time allotted. If I could have all the panelists, please turn on your cameras. Okay, I'll go around the room quickly to introduce all. I believe we're missing a couple, but I'll name them and hopefully they'll join us shortly. On the FAA side, my name is Mazda Kabi. I'm the Senior Foreign Representative. I'm located in Brussels, and UK is one of my highest priorities on an ongoing basis. On my team, Akwe Pippin, she's the country manager for UK. And Steve Steichel, who's the aerospace engineer for the International Programs branch in Air 41. And over to UK, Neil Williams, Safety Policy Manager, Operations Safety and Airspace Regulation Group.
Thank you.
Dominic Cortizo, Principal Design and Certification Specialist, Design and Certification. Mark Bonick, Principal Design and Certification Specialist, and Chris Street, who is not joined us yet, but he's a legal advisor for UK CAA, and Danelle Jordan, who's a bilateral aviation safety agreements and safety and business delivery coordinator. I believe that captures everyone. Great. So we'll proceed with the remainder of the presentation for US, and then I'll be passing this over to Dominic to conduct the remainder of the presentation. So basically, as you all know, we've had our agreement implemented since the beginning of the year. We had a outreach that we presented December 2nd of last year, and which predicated the implementation of the agreements, and with the expectations that we were thinking that some changes would be coming through. So if I could have the next slide, please. So I wanted to just take this opportunity to quickly give an update on the status of the relationship over the course of the last 6 months. And obviously, we've had a really good relationship leading up to this bilateral agreement, which was a great foundation to go off of. But the relationship has even developed stronger. We have almost sometimes weekly and sometimes multiple meetings during each week between the two authorities, which is beyond, compared relatively to the other authorities, is very good. As you, just to cover a few things that are mentioned on this slide here, the IPA revision 1 and the 2 supporting special arrangements were signed in December. And then they went into effect on January 1st, which kicked off a 2-year transition period that we were right now in the process of. Between my team and Neil's team, we are meeting on a monthly basis, and we are coordinating any particular circumstances that are coming up with the arrangements and the agreements, and we're taking note of them in preparation for future revisions. One of those has been the result of today's outreach, which is the Special Arrangement Revision 1. The other elements that are also in play, our team with an extensive technical team will be working with the UK CAA to conduct a technical assessment. This is part of what we had agreed on prior to the agreements going into implementation, and the purpose will be to provide us a more clear picture of the technical capabilities of CAA and what streamlined efforts we can implement between the two authorities post that. One of the elements of that we would like to highlight at this time, and it's still under development, still under negotiation, there is a charter for the maintenance of confidence that will also be implemented between the two authorities. Next slide, please. So just to highlight the strong relationship between the two authorities, we have several working groups in addition to our regular team meetings around the IPA that I would like to make all the audience aware of. We have some high-level working groups between both authorities and the Department for Transportation of the UK. And the focus there is for us to find opportunities for collaboration between the two authorities on emerging tech and innovation. So these are areas of new and emerging technology, AMM, UAM, and all those areas are being worked on, collaborated between the two authorities. So we're looking forward to hopefully there will be some results from that in showcasing further streamlined work between the two authorities. The other two groups that are also meet on almost a monthly basis is our cost group. We have our working level costs leadership in the FAA and their counterparts at the UK CAA that meet on a monthly basis. They share information and they collaborate on streamlining any responses to cost activity that is ongoing. This has worked out really well. It's assisted us in sharing information between the two authorities on cost conditions that come up. The other element is a validation working group. So we have a number of offices in the FAA, and we have our new international office that is coming together under Anthony Gallo. So those working level groups are meeting with their counterparts, with Dominic and Mark's teams at the UK side, and reviewing the ongoing projects. We're getting a status and scope of how the projects are going, and it's allowing us to keep in touch with the health of implementation of the IPA and these special arrangements. So that's a good summary of how things are going. And again, I'll reiterate that our relationship is very strong, and we're going to further that as time goes on. We believe there is a number of opportunities for us to further collaborate as we go forward with our relationship with the UK CAA as they stand up further. So without further ado, I will pass this over to Dominic for his presentation. And this last slide here has our information. I guess we'll make that available to everyone. Dominic, it's all yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mazdak. I can only reiterate what you've just said about our strong relationship and the way that we've been working so collaboratively. It seems quite a long time ago now that we were sat here giving the presentation to our friends in the US at the outreach end of last year, but we've moved on quite a pace. Excuse me. So I'd like to thank the FAA for the opportunity to actually present this revision 1 of the special arrangement that we have with our friends at the FAA. I should start really by saying good morning to everybody and good afternoon if there's any of you here in the UK. It's great to see so many familiar faces, familiar names, if not faces, and I hope that you're all keeping well. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dominic Cortizo. As Mastak said, I'm a Principal Design and Certification Specialist at the CAA, where I've worked for just best part of 31 years now, most currently as a PCM, Cabin Safety Specialist, DOA Team Leader, and much besides. So could we start off the presentation then with the first slide, please? So the intent of the presentation is to cover revision 1 of the special arrangement and also how to make applications to us at the CAA. It will be a little bit wordy, but the intent is that is deliberate so that you can use the presentation as a reference in the future. We will be referring to the special arrangement, and once or twice there'll also be references to what we call a further working agreement. The further working agreement is a term that we use to reflect the arrangements that we have in place that are almost identical to the special arrangement with the FAA, but the further working agreements are those that we have in place with our other colleagues in Transport Canada and ANAC. Next slide, please. So some of you may be familiar already with this revision 1 to the special arrangement between the FAA and the CAA. Why do we have a revision 1? Well, because the origins of the special arrangement originally was that one was prepared towards the end of last year when it looked like there was possibility of having a no deal between the UK and the EU. As it turned out, of course, there was an agreement reached through the Trade and Cooperation Agreement just on Christmas Eve of last year. And therefore, the original intent of the special arrangement that we had put in place was no longer valid, and it needs to be amended. And this is what we've been working on with our friends at the FAA, which I'm presenting to you today. Next slide, please. So why do we actually need a special arrangement in the first place? Well, first of all, we want to establish the expectations and the procedures associated with the transfer of the existing design approvals from EASA to the CAA. As a result of the agreement that was reached between the UK and the EU, EASA ceased being state of design and having those responsibilities for the organisations in the UK, from design organisations through to the TC holders. And therefore they passed back to us all of the work that was in place with the UK industry, and we had to find a way to continue to manage that. And this also included providing validation support to other applications elsewhere around the world. So we also wanted to ensure that we weren't reinventing the wheel. We wanted to be able to recognise the work that had been accomplished by EASA on the certification validation projects through to today, and also looking forward, and we agreed a nominal end date of 31st of December 2022 for this activity. So the process that is going to be followed for certification and validation projects is outlined in paragraph 3 of the special arrangement. Next slide, please. So moving on to paragraph 3 of the special arrangement, which again, I know that some of you looking at the names in the attendee list have already been working with, and successfully, I think, so far with ourselves. So the first section, 3.1 and 3.2, is really talking about where we are the certificating authority, taking on those responsibilities that previously EASA had, and where applications to the FAA are in progress. So initially, where EASA has already issued a design approval for which we have now taken responsibility as state of design, and for which the FAA validation is still in progress. Secondly, where EASA has an open application for a design approval from somebody in the UK, which has now been transferred back to us to complete, and where a FAA validation is also in progress, so typically a concurrent certification validation activities, but which EASA were not able to complete the validation process before the end of last year. So in these cases, the CA will be taking on the role of the certification authority from EASA, And to make it work, we will have been requesting all of the documentation in support of the application, either to come from EASA, which has been in a majority of cases, or where bits and pieces are missing from the applicant themselves. The FAA and CAA have agreed to recognise all of the certification and validation decisions and maintain the validation work plans where those are in place. The FAA has accepted and will accept transfer to the CAA without any further application to the FAA. So for a number of these projects, we've been writing an email to the FAA, just advising them that we have taken on this responsibility. It should be pointed out that the UK applicants have now had to make application to CAA for validation support, which enables us to raise our own administrative project numbers and so on, for us to be able to complete the certification support process. And for those projects, Section 3 of the IPA was followed for the rest of the project. Next slide, please. Now, Section 3.3 is probably the area that's most interest to the audience today. So this is where the FAA are the certifying authority, and it's for the CAA to be taking on the role of the validating authority. So we have a case here where the FAA has issued a design approval and EASA validation is pending, or the FAA has not yet issued the design approval and the EASA validation is also still pending. So the procedure for the continued validation really will be split into a couple of possibilities. First of all, the US design approval applicants may choose to rely on the EASA design approval that's already been undertaken by EASA. And if EASA is able to complete the validation by December 31st, 2022, then the design approval applicant can make an application to the CAA for a validation using what we call the application for administrative validation support on a new form that we've created, SRG 1727, which some of you are now already very familiar with. And this can be found on the CAA's website, and we've included the hyperlink here. Once completed, the form must be submitted to our email address at applycaa.co.uk. And I'd like to emphasize that for the simple reason that a number of applications have been being sent to the wrong email address. So for those of you new audience, can you please make a note that that is the correct email address to send your applications to us, and that way things won't get lost. Next slide, please. So when you go to the CAA website, you'll find this particular page, and it will give you a brief outline of the two cases for which this particular administrative validation process may be used. The first one may not directly apply to many applications coming in from the FAA, but there's the odd possibility that they could. And this is where we will get applications from non-UK TC holders for administrative amendment of CA validated type certificate data sheets or dedicated type sheets for noise. Now, this is particularly under the EASA arrangement that we have, where we will be accepting an awful lot of design changes from them that will affect the TCDSs, and we needed to have in place a process where we could update the TCDSs for those sorts of design changes. But of more interest for this conversation, item 2, applications for the CA validation of design approvals under the further working arrangements in place with Brazil, the USA and Canada. And again, this remains until the 31st of December. So when you hit our links, you can hit a couple of drop-down boxes and you can find the application process simplified for validation. Next slide, please. So when you hit the drop-down box, you'll see that this will pop up or pop down, and it just is an outline of who is responsible for what under this particular process. So under the administrative validation process, the applicant clearly is responsible for making the application through their national authority, and of course in this case that would be through the FAA, using this form SRG 1727, and I'm providing either the data pack that is required by the arrangement or the data that is necessary for us to update the TCDS or TDS for noise. With respect to the foreign authority, they're responsible for confirming the criteria is eligible for administrative validation, checking the completeness of the data, and then submitting it to the CAA. On receipt of the data pack, we verify that it is complete, and we will then use it to update the TCDS or TCDS for noise as applicable. And then lastly, we will issue our validation certificate or update that TCDS as necessary. Bear in mind that there may be cases where we have no technical involvement, but more of that in a moment. Next slide, please. So here is our form SRG 1727, and we have hopefully given clear instructions on how it should be completed. And I'm pleased to say that for those that we've received, it looks like the instructions have been sufficiently clear. And you will be responsible for filling out the blocks 3 and 4A or 4B as appropriate. If you have any queries, then please let us know and just drop an email to the apply email address, and we'll be able to advise you on how it should be done. Next slide, please. We've agreed that we will be applying only a nominal fee, which will be paid before the application is processed. So there's no variable schemes of charges or power by the hour. So the fee of £209 for this year is what will be required to be paid. Next slide, please. So lastly, the application should include a cover letter from the applicant addressed to the CAA. The template can be found in Appendix 1 of the special arrangement, and a copy of the application package that was originally submitted to our EASA in accordance with the streamlined validation and technical validation provisions that were found within the FAA-EASA TIP. We're looking to ensure continuity. Next slide, please. So under the special arrangement, we will process the application for the validation, take into account the work that's been undertaken by EASA, and we will look to give the maximum credit possible for the work that they have done, and also by the FAA, so that we can issue a design approval without further involvement. However, that statement only applies when the EASA validation has been completed and the EASA approval has been issued. As we said previously, for the work that has not yet led to an EASA certificate being issued, we would follow the guidance of the TIP, sorry, the IPA. Whoops. Next slide, please. However, it may be that because of your program management or your customer needs, you may not want to wait for EASA to issue the validating approval before the end of 2022. And therefore, there's still the possibility, not the possibility, the opportunity to make a new application in accordance with the IPA for the remaining parts of the project. And in this case, you may be asked to provide to us all of the data that you previously provided to EASA. So remember, this is the process to follow if you are requiring a CA validation before the EASA approval has been issued. And again, we will give maximum credit for the work that EASA has completed prior to the date of application. And I should point out that we have been applying the intent of this revision 1 of the special arrangement up until its recent formal issue. Next slide, please. Recapitulation. This is a word that I first saw on the poster that Acura issued to all of you to say that we'll be recapitulating. I can't even say it, recapitulating. So I've looked it up, and I'm now going to repeat some of the things that we've said previously on previous outreach seminars. We'd like to repeat the use of the form SRG 1726NR should be used for those projects for which you require direct validation in accordance with the IPA outside of the provisions of the special arrangement. And please note that with the experience and the feedback we've had, that form from the original issue that we presented to you at the end of last year has now been raised to issue 4, hopefully giving clearer guidance on how to complete it. And please note that it's sections 3 in particular that should be completed for requesting validation by CAA of an FAA approval. This again is available through the CAA website on the validation page. Next slide, please. Our scheme of charges have also been varied, and you should also bear in mind that the scheme of charges has been updated and is now valid from the 1st of April of this year through to 31st of March of next year. And that should be used to guide you on the fees and charges that should be paid in accordance with the applications on the form that I've just shown you. Next slide, please. Oh, fading slowly away. Questions and answers. I think there's been quite a few questions coming in. So can I defer to you now, Mazdak, to manage the Q&A session, please?
Yes, thank you, Dominic. Appreciate that. I believe our panelists have been answering some of the questions that have been coming in. So I'm not going to repeat questions that have been written. The Q&A panel for any new questions.
I apologize, Mazdak. I clicked the wrong answer. I clicked answer live to a question and lost it. So I think it was to do with one of your colleagues asked whether CAA would be recognised the ARSA CREs that had been completed for projects that have been worked under the special arrangement. Exactly. We will be accepting and recognise all the work that's been done by ARSA up until the point of conclusion. So hopefully that answers.
And can I say hello to Paul Sigmund for his kind message in the Q&A box? Hello, Paul.
Yeah.
It's good to see that there's some good history of relationships here in this forum.
Certainly something we want to build on, as I think everybody can see. We're very keen to make this relationship a really productive one, and then to make it as easy as we can to move designs and product between the two systems. Now that we've peeled ourselves away from EASA and very much have to chart our own future. So we thank the FAA for all the cooperation that you've extended to us in the last few years, and for the assistance that is ongoing at the moment.
Thank you for that, Neil.
Sorry, Maz. I was just wondering, Mark, is it while we're here, maybe it's an opportunity to maybe introduce your role and how it's relevant to our friends here in the US?
Yeah, okay. So I didn't see all the name of the participants, but I'm sure I've virtually met quite a few of you. I've been assigned the project certification manager, the PCM, for large aeroplane products coming out of the US. So I'm going to be the focal point for the likes of Boeing and Gulfstream and Cessna, Beechcraft, etc. So I'm likely to be your primary point of contact for those validation projects, at least until our team grows and I have some able deputies. So good to virtually meet you again, and again soon.
All right, as we are discussing here, a couple of questions are coming in, so I'll take this opportunity so we can answer them live, if that's okay. One of the questions here is, does the process also include validation of SDCs, or is it just for TC data sheets? And the IPA currently consists of several different certification documents, including TCs, SDCs, TSOs. So it's not just precluded to SDCs, to answer your question. The next question here, this goes for our UK friends here. Will UK CAA use the existing EASA regulatory requirements or the pre-EASA UK CAA regulatory requirements?
Okay. So, Mark, Dominic, do you want me to answer this one?
Well, it's your world.
Yeah,
Why
okay.
not? Why not? I've done enough talking for now. So
yeah, okay. So give you a moment off. Yes. So the rules that apply in the UK are those that were in place in the EASA system on the 31st of December last year. So we took all of the regulations as they stood at that time, and they were transferred across into UK domestic law by a thing called the Withdrawal Act that was in place. So that means that all of our standards are those that were extant at the end of last year. As we now move into our independent rulemaking function, we have a number of small changes to various different regulations that are in the process of being adopted through the UK parliamentary process, including those things where the CAA has the power to make some amendments. So my colleagues, Mark, Dominic will know there are a few updates to CSs, etc., that are working our way through the system. I don't think you would notice any difference to what we're seeking to adopt to those things that have already gone through the EASA system at this stage. I can't promise you that in the future there'd never be any deviation, but we're acutely aware that when it comes to technical standards, you know, they're largely globally harmonized, and that's what we'd seek to ensure is considered in any decision making we take going forward. I think there are a few more questions here, Mazda.
Yes, I'm trying to manage all this through my little iPad here, and the screen real estate is small. Okay, so quick question from Samantha Gertson. For administrative application, does the FAA need to send a cover letter in addition to cover letter from the applicant and application form? Akuya or Steve, do you want to answer that? I want to give everyone an opportunity to speak if possible.
Can you all hear me?
Say again, Akuya.
I was just making sure everyone could hear me. The cover letter that you need to use is the one required by the UK CAA. A template is attached to the revised special arrangement that is posted on the public site. So not required of the FAA, just the one required by the CAA.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So we have another quick question. I may need some further clarification on this. So will the UK CAA generate a new bilateral, question disappeared on me here. Just for everyone's awareness.
I just answered it live.
Okay.
The question was, will the UK CAA generate a new bilateral similar to the TIP? And the response was, the FAA and the UKA have already generated a new bilateral, which was signed in December 2020 and is posted on our public site.
Thank you, Kuya. So a quick question for our friends at the UK. What are the STC validation fees starting 2023?
I don't know if Mark, you will answer this, but I could certainly say we don't know.
Yeah,
because we haven't issued the consultation yet. The fees are subject to a period of consultation with industry, and they're normally published, correct me if I'm wrong, towards the end of this year or beginning of next year, for a period of months, and then the fees are formally published and come into effect for the 1st of April of that year. So fees starting 2023 are a long way off.
Yeah,
we haven't actually agreed the fees yet for 22-23. So watch this space, I suppose.
Yeah, there'll be a consultation later in the year, as there always is, on fee changes in the UK system.
Okay, thank you. So we have a question from Jason Dickstein. Third-party critical PMAs reflect the small minority of exported PMAs from the US. Typically, they have required EASA STC and as a condition of acceptance in the EU. And this process seems to have been adopted in the UK-US bilateral TIP. IPA should be. Will there be a process for accepting such STCs when issued by EASA?
Okay, so I'll answer that one. I think it's a possibility in the future that there could be a change to our IPA that gets to the place where we could accept FAA certification of critical parts, but we haven't done any work on that area of this arrangement as yet. So it's something for future discussion. I think we would be mindful of where the relationship between EASA and the FAA has got to in terms of that. And I think that's probably all I can say at the moment, because I don't want to give an indication of whether we will change or not at this stage. We just recognize it's something for further discussion in the future.
Thank you, Neil.
Would you like me to take the query from Eric Brown?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Please read it
Eric.
out loud.
No, thank you. So Eric has written, we have been communicating with EASA for several years concerning the availability of repair instructions for the Doughty R48 propeller. These concerns have not yet been resolved. Will this discussion now transition to UK CAA as a state of design for Doughty propellers? Well, I recently passed over the PCM ship to a colleague of mine to take on for Doughty propellers. However, I was not aware of this discussion. Doughty have not mentioned it to us. So, Eric, could I invite you to drop me an email with an outline of the particular concerns? We'll certainly be looked to work out why they've not been resolved yet. And if we can do it, then yes, we will. And we'll sort it out. So I hope that answers your query. Maybe it's worth putting my email address in the chat box. I don't know. So Eric can see it. Shall I do
believe
that?
Priya is answering. Yep.
Okay.
Via text. So quick question from Charlene. How will the UKCA validate aspects associated with the 25.1302 human factors if application is being made to UK and not a follow-on EASA application?
I'm not entirely clear about the question. Mark, are you completely clear? How will the CA validate aspects associated with a particular requirement, in this case 25.1302, if application is being made to UK?
I don't think we'd apply any specific rules with regard to that particular requirement. We'd validate it in exactly the same way we would do with other requirements.
If it's part of the certification basis for the product under validation, then we will work with it. We have human factors specialists, so we will deal with it.
Yeah.
So the other question, Dominic DaCosta, you've requested clarification. How will, I guess, these changes affect associate members, i.e. Turkey? So right now, what we are discussing here today is a bilateral agreement between UK and US only. Other bilateral agreements or association members are not being addressed with this presentation or these changes that we are covering today. And then second question from Dominic, will the FAA-UK CAA modify their undue burden rules for UK CAA support? Dominic, did you want to take that?
Well, actually, I was putting my thumb up to Eric for his kind words in the Q&A. Undue burden rules. I'm not sure if Dominic, my namesake, could actually be a bit more specific as to what he's referring to there.
Dominic, if I could invite you to just be a little further clear on that. As far as undue burden rules that I understand, I don't think we're going to be modifying anything on the US side in support of work that's going on currently with UKCA. That may change in future iterations of the IPA, but current IPA does not have any modifications or streamline efforts, for lack of a better word, for undue burden rules.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and Neil as well, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we don't always have an undue burden test on the UK side, but you know, there's nothing in the arrangements at the moment that alters the standard practice on these things.
So another question from John Pelton. When EASA design approval is issued within 2 years after December 31st, 2020, and application for approval was made before December 31st, 2020, approximately how long will it take for the UKCA to issue certification?
I'm loath to give a specific number of days, but if the EASA design approval has been issued and it's covered by the scope of the special arrangement, then as I indicated in the presentation, there is no technical involvement onto the CAA side. We're effectively almost doing a streamlined validation in a way. So really, it's a case of making sure that we have the sufficient data package as required, requested by the special arrangement. And if that's in place, then it shouldn't take, I think, Mark, do we have a nominal with other people? I know 20 working days, something like that. I would have been drawn on it, but it wouldn't take more than a couple of weeks or two, I would have thought.
Yeah, depends on capacity at the time. But
Yep.
if you have a particularly urgent request, then it always pays to send us a direct message, and we'll bring up the priority queue as necessary.
Yep.
There's another question in the box from Mike Stell. I have an FAA project that does trigger an EASA SEI item for a UK customer. I believe this will drive the CAA application. However, further coordination with EASA resulted in a basic accepted classification, so no EASA application is required. And the FAA project was initiated before 2021. Does this case fall in the special agreement, and can I take advantage of the administrative validation by using the SRG 1727 form as stated in section 3.3?
Application was made before the end of last year. Is that correct? It says in the, yeah, the FAA project was initiated. Okay, so FAA project was initiated before then. It was then made into a basic accepted classification, so no EASA application is required. Okay, so in that case then, I think we're probably going to go down several possible routes here. Neil, please interrupt me if I stray from the chosen path. But if the project was initiated before the end of last year and it was agreed that it would be basic in the previous terminology that has now passed, if you like, then, as you say, it would have been accepted by EASA. So I suppose the question is, has it been issued with an FAA approval yet? Because if it has, then I think there's a question there for us to think about, Neil. If the EASA, well, the EASA approval is implicit in the FAA approval being issued.
Yep.
So I guess I guess the answer is it depends.
Another thing to consider there, Dominic. I mean, I'm inferring from the question that the design change was subject to acceptance under the EU-US TIP, and that the conditions for acceptance under the UK-US IPA are very, very similar to the EU-US TIP. So you might not even need an application. If it was accepted under the EU-US TIP, it's very likely that it would be accepted under the UK-US one, IPA, and an application wouldn't be necessary.
Yeah. If the exercise wasn't complete before the end of last year, then
it's still subject to acceptance, then
absolutely
no application necessary at all.
So probably worth going to your local FAA.
Approval has not been issued.
Well, in that way, it doesn't necessarily matter, does it? I think what Mark's saying is that follow the IPA in the first instance, because it may be that this is a modification that could be accepted by us. And if it's not, then maybe we need to have a further discussion, because I think it probably depends. Because if we were then not to be able to accept it, it will be subject to validation. It's, but I think one of the key things is you haven't got the FAA approval yet, either of you.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Ed Chalpin. Will the CAA-UK be conducting approvals totally in digital data format and have all paper data submittals being eliminated?
Yes.
Yeah, we prefer digital.
Yes.
If you send us the paper, if you send us the paper, we'll end up scanning it into the system anyway. So
I think, to be fair, it's generally been the other way round, that our friends in the FAA have required paper copies to be provided rather than ourselves in the CAA. So hopefully that answers your query.
Thank you. And there's a follow-up from Mr. Dominic DaCosta regarding Turkey. It's a two-part. He says he understands our response. There is no special agreement with the Turkey and the USA, so he means that if the UKA and Turkey enter into an agreement, is there a way for U.S. applicants to use that agreement in a dual certification program? The reason for his question is presently Turkey has several U.S. aviation facilities operating in Turkey, i.e. GA, Pratt, Honeywell, and Rolls-Royce, etc.?
So I'll try to answer that quickly, and then maybe have our friends at the UK also try to answer it too. For the first part, currently the US is working on a working arrangement with Turkey, so that's in the works. My counterpart, Amir Yunsi, is developing that. I can't give you a window of when. These things are unpredictable, so but I know it's under development. The scope of if there is an agreement between Turkey and UK, I don't know how that will translate into the current bilateral agreement that we have with UK, but I'll also let the friends of UK answer that portion too.
Okay, thank you, Mazdak. So at the moment, the UK doesn't have any kind of working arrangement with Turkey. There is the possibility that that could happen in the future. It's certainly something we know our Turkish counterparts are interested in. I would say, consistent with most bilateral arrangements, the clue is in the name. It's an agreement between two parties, not a multilateral arrangement between several or many parties. So there may be some synergies if we were to enter into an arrangement, but it's too early to say. The UK hasn't even started work on scoping any potential arrangement with Turkey or any of the other EASA associate states, you might say, outside of those that are EEA members, where we have got some agreements with Iceland and Switzerland, and very soon one with Norway.
Thank you, Neil. From Ezra Sasson, what is the UK CAA website that is similar to the FAA RGL?
Okay, so there is a CAA regulations web page. We put the link in a minute into the answer here. There you can find consolidated versions of the UK legislation that comes from the government website. Unfortunately, they don't produce consolidated versions, so CAA has done that. You'll also find in there the adopted versions of the certification specifications as they stand today. I have to apologise slightly for the formatting. It's not the best, but they are complete. And you can find all those on the regulations page of the CAA website, and I will post the link in a moment.
I've just sent a link in response to the question, Neil.
Okay, thank you. That saves me a task.
Okay, we have a follow-up from Ed Charlton. What cybersecurity provisions are you considering and applying for design and product manufacture?
Is this one for you, Mark, as this sits in your domain? I think I should be talking about in certification in terms of regulations for cybersecurity.
Yeah, well, the CAA regulation set for cybersecurity is exactly the same as the EASA's was. I don't think that's changed this year at all. We have the same provisions in Part 21. We have the same provisions within the certification specifications for invoking cybersecurity considerations as part of the certification project. And we have some guidance material in AMC 20-42, which explains the cyber security aspect process in terms of developing a risk assessment, for example. So if you're familiar with the EASA process, the CAA's is the same. And we have a dedicated cybersecurity team, which is very big inside CAA now, and there will be active cybersecurity certification specialists engaged in any certification or validation projects.
I think also to add to what Mark's just said, there is a task in the UK rulemaking programme that's picking up on the piece of work that's already been initiated in the EASA system that could introduce some further requirements that are broader than those currently at play. Details of all our rulemaking efforts will go on a dedicated CAA website that's just about ready for to be posted up. So you'll be able to see those things when we get to the consultation phase. Like all regulators, we're required to consult widely on those proposals. So we'd invite your participation in that when that happens in a few months' time.
Thank you, Mark and Neil. Ed says thank you as well. We have a question from Scott Pepper. Applicants can use the experience clause under the FAA-UK tip to allow a basic application, even if triggered by an SEI, if both authorities agree to allow prior to the MOC. Will this be practiced by the CAA, and will prior EASA MOC be considered?
I assume by MOC you're talking about means of compliance, Scott? And if you are, then again, I wait to be slapped on the back of the hand by my colleagues, but if it's the EASA MOC that was agreed before the end of last year, then it's part of our regulatory set as well, because we were abiding by that because we're part of the EASA system. If something new comes along, then it will be treated on its own merits on a case-by-case basis in accordance with the provisions of the IPA. However, bear in mind that we have a dialogue with yourself. It may be something that you want to explore further with my colleague Mark as the BCM for USTC holders of large aircraft.
Yeah, I would suggest also in the scope of those particular arrangements, we would speak directly, Scott, on the scope of how they will evolve. We anticipate that there'll be some level of divergence in the future between EASA, our FAA's agreements with EASA and FAA's agreements with UKCA. So with being mindful of that, it might be, even if there is some pre-existing agreements, we may need to renew those and put them into place under the umbrella of the bilateral agreement between the FAA and UKCA so they can evolve appropriately.
Okay. Follow-up from Paul Stiegman, verifying, yes, EASA cybersecurity is still in special conditions as are ours, presuming that the UK's are also. I believe this might have already been addressed by Mark or Neil. Do you have any follow-up?
The cybersecurity requirements might be invoked by special condition. It just depends on the certification basis of the project. But as I said, there are cybersecurity provisions in the latest versions of the CSs for 23, 25, 27, 29, and ETSO and the like.
Thank you, Mark. From Keith Jones, a project where FAA certification was completed prior to 2021 and EASA validation was initiated prior to 2021, but not yet complete as of today, and is still expected to complete prior to the end of 2022. Should the SRG 1727 application for administrative validation and application package be submitted before EASA validation is complete, after EASA validation is complete, or is either acceptable?
I'll take that. We wouldn't be able to complete our approval until we had in our hands the EASA approval certificate. So it wouldn't necessarily accelerate anything by applying before EASA had issued their approval.
I suppose one thing that maybe Keith's trying to do is to hedge his bets on an increase in charges as of April 1st next year. So he got his application in now and they went up. But it could go down as well, Keith. So it's up to you. But I agree with Mark, your answer.
Thank you, gentlemen. I believe Steve is already addressing Mahmoud's question about is the FAA charging validation fees. Also, no, the FAA does not charge validation fees. Attendees, if you have additional questions, please submit them via the Q&A at this time. Attendees, if there are any additional questions, you may submit them via the Q&A at this time. We'll give a few more minutes. Otherwise, we will wrap up this special arrangement outreach session for the U.S. industry.
I would just highlight also that I believe we will make these Q&As available after this session is completed. So if anyone wants to refer back to them, they'll be made available. Okay, I think we have a few that came in.
think there's a couple of new
Okay.
questions there.
So from Ned Teeny, where do I find all the UK CAA hyperlinks? There's a link in the special arrangement that takes you to the main page of all the hyperlinks, but I'll defer to the CAA team if there is a better link that we can pop into the chat for everyone's benefit.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether you say all UKC hyperlinks. I think, Akira, the hyperlink in the special arrangement is the one that would take you straight to the validation page, and everything that you need is there as a US applicant. Or goes to the CA website, and you can use the search function and so on.
Yeah, I've just typed in the hyperlink to the validation of design approvals page on the CA website in response to that question.
Thank you, Mark. Question from Jim. If we have several products under STC and EASA approval, and those same products are flying on UK certified A/C, do we need to proactively ask for UK validation?
If they're not already EASA approved and accepted by us prior to the end of last year, or subsequently since the beginning of this year under the respective arrangements that we have in place with EASA, then the aircraft shouldn't be flying. Is my simple answer. So,
and he follows and FAA approval. So do we need to proactively ask for FAA validation and FAA approval? I'm sorry, UK validation and FAA approval.
Yeah, if those were not validated by the FAA, previously under
sorry, Matt,
the
Matt's
EASA
a bit
agreement,
funny.
and now currently under the UK bilateral agreement. And is there a? I apologize. Hopefully, everyone can still hear me.
Yeah, I think we missed the juicy bit of what you said, actually, Master. I'm afraid.
All right, I'll repeat again.
Please.
So if the FAA had validated those inbound validation applications from EASA and approved them, then that's no issue. But if there is, if they were not approved by the FAA, then they would need to be resubmitted. Apologies for the connection issues here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mazdak. One from Iret. Can MPRE, or that might be an error, can these meetings be scheduled in the future to, I think he's trying to say, can more of these meetings be scheduled in the future to address additional questions? Absolutely, we're happy to schedule follow-on sessions. If you have specific topics that you would like us to address, please send us an email and we'll be sure to schedule these sessions to address those topics. If you would like general overview sessions about the IPA itself or the special arrangements, we're happy to do a follow-up in a few months' time if you find that during your use you encounter any issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with Akira on that. We want to make sure these arrangements work not only between the regulators, but by the folk who benefit from their content. So always happy to do that.
But if you have any queries outside of that, then you could always drop us an email, or I suppose your first port of call should be your local friendly FAA ACO or equivalent before you come to us. But yeah, we're always open. The door's always open for queries and clarifications. Of course it is.
And Irit, hopefully I'll be able to answer some of those questions as they arise during Boeing validation projects.
There is a follow-up from Jim. Go ahead.
Sorry, I would just add to that we're anticipating a series of further developments in our bilateral agreements in the future. So we will certainly use this platform to convey that. I think it's worked out really well. It allows everyone to come together very quickly, and especially have these Q&A sessions as well. And I would also add, if you have particular questions that you would like to ask both authorities at the same time, we can always make arrangements for both authorities to meet with you in a particular case, if that's necessary as well.
Thank you, Mazdak. The follow-up from Jim indicates to his previous question regarding whether or not he would have to seek UK validation and FAA approval. He says, sorry, yes, they are already FAA and EASA approvals. from user YR069D. Could you please provide your email addresses, please? The email addresses for the primary contacts will be included in the slide presentations that we will share after this session. And then we'll also put our primary overall inboxes in there so that everyone will have the addresses they need to make contact. From Samantha Giberson, for typical applications, they need to go through the FAA and sent to the UK from the FAA. For admin apps, does the application or does the applicant send directly to the UK and not through the FAA? My understanding is that it should always come through the FAA, but I'll defer to Mazdak and Steve.
Yeah, I would ditto that. I think regardless of it's because the 3030 request, it does need to come through one of our ACR offices in the capacity of request from the applicant, especially when we are the state of design.
Thank you. Question from Doug Rudolph. I think this has already been addressed. Where are the hyperlinks that were mentioned? I'm not seeing them in the Q&A responses. I believe Mark sent some. So Mark, if you've submitted it, hopefully you didn't send it private, then everyone should be able to see that link in the Q&A. If not, we will share it via email to all attendees after the session.
I think Mark put them in the chat box. I think Mark put them in the chat box. Mark, can you confirm where you put them? So it's not in Q&A, it's in the chat box, isn't it, Mark? Are you muted, Mark? Mark, you're muted.
I put it in the response to the Q&A.
Oh, you did, okay.
Is there a better place to put it? Put it in the chat box?
Well, if it can't be seen in the chat box, I think we've got the answer. We make sure it goes out with any information that comes out after the meeting so that you can get the access to the information. We should try and make this easy.
All right, so we have a question from Sarah. Where do countries stand on the MIP/MAG? And I assume by countries, she's specifically referring to the UK.
Okay, I'll take that one. I don't know if my colleague John Benning's still on the line, but we have arrangements in place for maintenance organisations. At the moment, the UK recognises the EASA approvals issued to repair stations in the USA, and the FAA recognises approvals issued by the CAA to organisations in the UK, and the procedures are all set out in our MAG and in the MIP. So it's all there. You can find that. It's on the FAA website. It's also on the Bilaterals page of the CAA website, and functionally it works very much the same way as it did when the UK was part of the EU-US agreement. So nothing's changed there at this stage.
Sarah follows with after 2020 when the current situation ends. Okay,
so the current situation will stand until the end of 2022. What we need to do between now and then is have some further discussions about an update to the MAG and the MIP actually to set out how we will handle future relations. There's already been some very preliminary discussions amongst lawyers, but I think that's all I can really say at the moment because we haven't an agreed outcome at this stage.
Thank you. Mark from the UK has provided a link within the Q&A. Hopefully all attendees can now see that and access it. It will still be provided via email when we send the presentations to attendees afterwards. If there are any final questions, we're happy to take them in the Q&A at this time. Attendees, if you have any final questions, we will give you about 1 more minute until 11:36 a.m. We're scheduled to 12, but if we do not receive any questions, we will not take up any more of your valuable time. Hearing none, I will hand the floor back over to Mazdak and Neil for any closing remarks.
Great, thank you. I hope everyone can still hear me well. I apologize. There's bit of a connection issue on my end here. But thank you again for taking the time today to attend this. We've hopefully conveyed the recent changes well and clear in the scope of what they involve. And hopefully also we've highlighted the strong relationship that we have with the UK CAA. I'm excited about, and I know Neil is as well, but between both of our teams, we are furthering and evolving the relationship as we go forward. Again, thank you for your time. I will turn it over to Neil.
Thank you, Mastak. I'd just like to say thank you for taking part in this. I think these outreach sessions are really very useful from our point of view, because they give us a sense of the questions that folk in industry have that we can then take back into discussions about how do we make sure our arrangements are clear and everybody understands them. We really appreciate the interaction we're having with the FAA. It's a really good thing for us as we re-emerge from a topic where once we were a really big part of the aircraft certification domain, and now we're coming back into that. And you know, we want to do our bit to support the whole community. So you can see we're fully committed to that, and to working through all these various arrangements that reduce the burden both on the regulator and on industry to allow you to move your products from one market to another. So with that in mind, all I can say is thank you for your cooperation today. I hope we've given you answers to your questions that are really useful. If you have anything further, please don't hesitate to contact us, because we really genuinely want you to clear up your queries, and where that might take us back into further discussions in the future about improving the text of the arrangements we have, we will do that. Thank you.
And it's thank you from me. Is it thank you from him, Mr. Bonnick?
Yeah,
Yes, thank you from me.
Yeah, thank you, Dominic, for giving the main body of the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. With that, we'll conclude the presentation. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers all.
Right.